Welcome to the Canadian Business Quarterly podcast, where we speak with Canada's most influential industry leaders on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all of our content, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Randstad Canada CEO Marc-Étienne Julien. Marc-Étienne is responsible for the strategic oversight of all the company's Canadian business operations. Under his direction, Randstad Canada has achieved the number one ranking in the Staffing Industry Analysts 2017 annual list of the largest Canadian staffing firms, cementing its reputation as Canada's leader in staffing, recruitment, and HR services. Over the years, Marc-Étienne has introduced new business concepts with a view of expanding the portfolio of solutions and adding value for Randstad's clients, such as Randstad In-House Services, which offers access to a high-volume workforce and a complete HR process delivered at the client site. Recently, he's integrated Randstad SourceRight, which focuses on workforce management outsourcing solutions to their Canadian operations. As Randstad Global recently acquired RiseSmart and Monster, Marc-Étienne now focuses on further developing and promoting Randstad Canada's total talent architecture approach to current and prospective clients. Marc-Étienne, thanks for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Look, for listeners who may be unfamiliar with the Randstad brand, could you give us a bit of background on the organization?
Yeah, sure. So Randstad is, as we speak, the second largest provider in the staffing industry globally. So, and I say the second because we're a short moment away from hopefully becoming number one. So we do operate in the arena of recruitment and HR services. Randstad, as I mentioned, is present all around the globe. Here in Canada, the company was founded in 1997 and grew by mean of acquisition and organic growth. And this year was a very exciting milestone for us. We've been officially named after 20 years in the country as the number one largest provider in the Canadian market. And now, over the last couple of years, actually, our service offering have broadened quite a bit, and now allow us to provide more services to our HR customer other than pure temp and permanent recruitment.
And so how many offices are we talking about? Because you're a fully nationalized, you're a global company, but in Canada, what is your footprint?
Yeah, we have about 60 offices. We cover coast to coast, so we have offices in both Halifax and Victoria, with a very good geographical distribution in between. Our team right now at the moment is of about 900 internal employees. And we operate in various different segments of the market, such as IT, engineering. We operate in the manufacturing sector, in finance, sales and marketing, HR. So we do cover most skill set that customer may be looking for, or job seeker may be looking for.
Okay. I'll ask you a little bit more about the industries that you work across, but when we originally had the chance to speak the other week, we had mentioned that you sort of fell in with the Randstad company. I mean, you hadn't necessarily been working your way towards recruitment, had you?
No, I actually fell into recruitment by accident. And I must say I'm still on my first job, to be quite honest. So I joined Randstad in 2001. Following my bachelor degree, I had the joy to go to Mexico for a 6-month internship and in international commerce. And when I came back to Canada, I was, as any new graduate, looking for my first job. And I was actually fortunate enough that the first interview I was able to secure was at Randstad, but for an external client. And throughout the interview process, I ended up being hired at Randstad. So I started in 2001 as a staffing consultant at the time. I was placing people in the manufacturing sector.
And so what was your personal journey, working your way through to becoming the CEO nationally for Canada?
Yeah, I've had a very exciting And I consider myself lucky for all the opportunities that were offered to me over those 16 years now. So as I mentioned, I started as a staffing consultant. So I was responsible for finding customers, and once companies were trusting us with their recruitment, actually myself finding the employees that they were looking for. Did that for about a year, a little more than a year, then moved into a strategic sales function for about a year or two as well. And then I was given my first managerial opportunity. So I was offered the opportunity to run one of our locations in Laval in Quebec. And from there, grew the business to a few other branches. I eventually moved to Quebec City to open up the operations there. And in 2008, Randstad actually performed the largest acquisition that globally that ever happened in our industry, which of course had a significant impact in the organization here in Canada as well, because the company we acquired was actually locally bigger than we were at the time. So that, of course, changed a little bit our leadership structure. I was offered back then the opportunity to lead a bigger part of one of our line of business. And from there, I eventually became the president of one of our line of business, the line of business that we call Randstad Staffing. And down the path, I had the chance to open up a few other new services that broaden our service portfolio. And then a little over 2 years ago, I had the joy and the pleasure to essentially head the complete operation for Canada, including all of our service offerings.
And Randstad is known as a global recruitment company, but our listeners may not know the scope of your services. You've touched on this a little bit, but can you break down the business units that make up the Canadian business?
Yeah, sure. And it really is. And every time I speak with a customer, people are now quite surprised about the scope of and the range of services we can provide today. So we have what we call our traditional, lines of business or services. That are, because we operate in a specialized way, it's difficult in the recruitment industry to be proactive and relevant if you try to do everything. So we do operate with specialization. So our traditional lines of business are staffing that covers the manufacturing, the clerical, the call center segments. We have Randstad Technology that obviously look after position in IT. We have Randstad Engineering, and we also have Randstad Professionals, underneath which we have a finance, an HR, and a sales and marketing division. So those are our core businesses. On the side of that, over the years, through organic development and acquisition, we've broadened now our range of services, and the acquisition of Monster is a good example. So last year, Randstad globally made the acquisition of Monster. So now Monster is part of our family. Underneath Monster, we have The Foundry, which is a company focused on employer branding that provides employer branding services to our Canadian customers. We have Randstad Sourceright, who operates in the arena of RPO, so recruitment process outsourcing, or MSP, which stands for Master Service Provider Services. So product offering that are tailored to usually a large organization. We also have made the acquisition recently of RiseSmart, which is an outplacement service that's very built on a interesting technologically driven model, but also provide their end client with a strong combination of technology and a human touch. Most recently, we've started also to operate a IT solution practice, where we can now transact with our customer in project mode and increase the amount of value we can provide them through that service. So as you can see now, we've really broadened our portfolio, and we're in a position now in the Canadian market where we can actually support our customer throughout their whole employee life cycle, whether it is when they try to brand themselves as an employer, when it's time to recruit them, or when, unfortunately, companies have to make more difficult decisions, and then we can ease the transition of those employees back into the marketplace.
I was just going to say, it sounds like the service offering fulfills the whole life cycle now, from finding a job, specific recruitment and placement, and then I'm sorry, what's the term that you used again for RiseSmart?
For outplacement.
For outplacement as well. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So now really we're getting out of the pure traditional recruitment industry, and we're expanding our wings, if you will, into the broader human capital space, where we can provide greater value to our strategic partners.
And just for our listeners, I mean, with your experience in the sector and also being able to service all these markets, how has the industry changed then? Now that now that brands like RiseSmart are a large portion of your portfolio, how is this affecting employment these days?
Yeah, it is. The market is evolving very fast, and I've been here for, as I mentioned, a little over 16 years now. The way our function operate now is slightly different. Technology changes the way our business operate, and will that change? We expect is only going to continue accelerating, but also our client needs have evolved, and we are now at the pace at which organizations have to change. It creates a scarcity for skilled employees, and most I should say provincial or local employment market very often don't even keep up in terms of availability of resources and the amount of resources that are available in the marketplace, or new graduate and newcomers into the marketplace. So that creates a lot of scarcity for certain skill set, which is a much broader issue that we've observed over the last few years than what it was 16 years ago, where we operated back then more as a screening center, if you will. Now our function is a lot more geared towards understanding the talent ecosystem and supporting our customer and how they can attract the proper talent within their organization.
Actually, it's a good place to segue, because even for myself included, it's the perception of what recruiters do, and you touched on what you guys used to do versus what you currently do now. I mean, when you're dealing with clients who from the corporate sector, what are the misconceptions that you find around recruitment in terms of the services that you offer and how and why they engage you?
That's interesting, Jeff, because I think some companies do not fully understand the positive impact that a strong recruiting partner can have on them. And sometimes there is a misconception about the value that these customers can get from partnering with the right organization. But when you think about it, companies now, the success of all companies depend on their talent and depend on their workforce and their employees. And the speed at which companies need to evolve now is critical for organizations to be able to compete. And that what used to be true in the commercial side of a company is now also true on the talent side, and whether or not companies can attract the right people in their organization. That's the true differentiator of successful companies nowadays. When you consider partnering with a strong recruitment partner or firm, that can truly turn into a big differentiator for organizations that struggle competing in the employment marketplace, because companies usually, and that's the reason why most companies do business with us, either they do not have the infrastructure to find the right talent, or they have challenges actually positioning themselves as an attractive employer into the proper talent ecosystems, or simply they don't have the time or the skills or the expertise to do so. And there's a cost to organization for not being capable of filling their seats. And when you measure the time that it's going to take them, the investment it's going to take them, the impact if they get it wrong, but also the time it takes before while the seat is open, and a person is not adding value to their organization, then usually the cost that is associated with the service becomes immaterial. And I think sometimes sometimes companies think that the fees will be outrageous, but when you factor all those things, most organizations quickly realize that the value is there, and there's a large benefit for them because we can really shorten the time for them to fill their position, but also support them in making sure that they get that decision right.
And where do you think that benefits the corporate more? Is it just because you guys have an existing database of these people with this industry knowledge, or is it because your staff have insights on how to vet these candidates for corporates? Like, in a practical sense, what is being offered there?
Yeah, it's a combination of a few things. A database doesn't mean anything anymore because databases are open now. Right? So we can up on any social network now and quickly perform a search and have access to talent. I think the reason why a lot of those companies are doing business with us is that that information is available to everybody now. But it requires expertise on how to approach those individuals. It requires relationship with those individuals. It requires also a qualification from a technical standpoint to assess their skills, but also time is very often of the essence. And what we provide to the corporation is also a byproduct of what we provide to the talents. And very often for talents, it is complicated, it is challenging to look for a job. And as we have such a large concentration of employment or job opportunities for them, we quickly become an attractive place to look for because by meeting one individual, they can open up the door to, we have 6,000 customers across the country. So that eases their search process because they can truly partner with someone that knows the market, that's going to give them advice on what opportunities are interesting in the marketplace. And that also on the customer side shorten the time that they have to access those individuals. And that's usually the core of where companies will find values because for a company that's going to hire only one or two individuals in a certain scarce skill set, it is very difficult actually to position themselves and have the network that's proactively maintain and allowing them to quickly access those talents. As this is what we do for a living, it's our core practice. We have a very large network of people with whom we maintain relationship, and then in result, we can actually make sure that they get the resources they need in real time. And real time is also important for companies because they want to have the flexibility, which is why we offer both the temp and the permanent services. So it's not just a matter of attracting the resources or the skills, but sometimes there's the duration of the assignment as well. And companies do not always need the skills on a permanent basis. So we also provide that flexibility for them to hire the proper talent, either on a contractual or on a permanent basis, which ease their access to the competencies that they require.
And with the talent that you effectively manage on behalf of employees, what does this mean with the recent acquisition of the Monster employee website? How will this now fit in with your brand? And can you talk about the scope of this acquisition and what it means for the company moving forward?
Yeah, we're really excited about it. First, Monster has a very strong brand. Is a very well-established, recognized, and credible brand in the world of employment and finding jobs. So we're very happy and grateful to have that brand now join the Randstad family. Monster has also, of course, and I was referring back to the fact that being entrenched into the talent ecosystem is very important for us. So of course, Monster has a direct access to a lot of people in Canada and globally as well. So that strengthens our position in the marketplace from a broader standpoint. And Monster is also a strong technology player. So they've developed over time, and I mentioned technology is becoming a game changer in our industry, as it is for so many other industries. And Monster, over the years, has built a very interesting suite of technological solutions that we find may embed themselves really well into our own processes or could turn into a very interesting add-on to our services towards our clients as well.
So in terms of your industry and the outlook for the Canadian economy and employment, where do you see the forward-looking opportunities?
Yeah, it is certainly an exciting time right now. The Canadian economy overall is doing well, so we're performing as an economy quite nicely for the last little while. So that drives, of course, a lot of excitement, I should say, in the employment market, because usually people will be a lot more open to considering a new career opportunity when the economy is doing well, because people feel more confident than when the economy is not. Usually we see people being a little more conservative in their likelihood of doing a job change. So that creates a lot of interesting momentum for us, for sure. The Canadian staffing industry is also at a young stage in its maturity level, if I can say. So we measure, just to give you a comparison with other countries, we measure the maturity of the staffing industry by an index that's called the penetration rate. So it essentially monitors what's the proportion of the total workforce that is employed through a service like ours. And Canada is hovering at about 1%, when we see other major economies like the U.S., for example, that's at closer to 2%, or European country like the U.K. and the Netherlands hovering, and France hovering between 3 and 4%. So clearly we have some interesting perspective from a long-term standpoint, because clearly the adoption of the industry is going to keep improving over the years. And on top of that, it's being fueled by a positive economic climate right now. So we're very excited about how the market is going to drive a lot of potential over the next few years.
And on a more personal level, in your role as CEO and your growth and expansion through moving into that role, what are some of the personal lessons that you've learned on that journey?
It's hard to know where to start, because I learned a few on over the course of my experience. I think the most important one for me, and I think it's clearly a personality trait that I've seen from the people that I'm surrounded with, that have followed a similar trend, is the importance of humility. And I think being in a leadership role it requires a lot of it, actually, especially when you grow on the job, because clearly it's impossible to master everything all at once. So there's a lot of lessons that will come your way. And I find that the people that are the most open to learning about themselves and being capable of being self-aware, understanding their strengths, understanding their weaknesses, are the people that will usually learn the most, but also learn how to surround themselves with the right people. It's impossible I'm not a believer of one-man shows and companies that are built that will consistently grow under the leadership of an individual that will not be well surrounded. And I think that's one key component or one key success factor that I've seen over time and over the years be probably the most important success factors for leaders to be able to be self-aware, be able to learn great lessons, and learn from their mistake, learn from their experience, but also be open to feedback from individuals. The most important feedback you get is not from your clients or even your boss, it's from your staff and your employees, your team members. I believe that if there's enough self-awareness there, then people should be capable of understanding their own gaps, working on them, of course, but also surrounding themselves with people that will make them better and challenge them outside of their comfort zone. And clearly, I'm lucky that I've got a lot of those leaders as well working with me on our team. So I think that's one of the key leadership trait that I've seen having positive impact on the people.
Marc-Étienne, I think that's a good place for us to wrap up today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
This has been a production of the Canadian Business Quarterly, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Canadian Business Quarterly, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.